and why that difference matters more than ever. Having said all that, Katie, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It is great to be here. So I'm Katie Hubbard. I'm president of Walton Global and Walton RE Securities. We are a boutique alternative investment manager. So I'm coming in really from the capital raising side of things. I've been with Walton for 10 years, but I've also been on other aspects of the alternative investment. So I actually started my career as a home builder, which is, Walton, we finance land for public home builders. So I started off building homes, realized that was not going to be good for my skin to be outdoors building homes in Colorado in the cold and the snow. So went back to school, got my master's in finance, and then I became a commercial real estate broker and was selling institutional apartment buildings. And I think that's relevant to mention because a lot of the alternatives that we see, some of them do have a multifamily asset class. And so I have a lens of being on the selling side as a broker, selling to the groups that were purchasing institutional apartment buildings for their funds for people to invest in as an alternative alternative asset. And from there, somebody said, oh, you have real estate and finance, you should become a wholesaler. I didn't even know what a wholesaler was. They said you should get a Series 7 and you need a Series 7. Didn't know what that was, but here I am, like 20 years later. I have been capital raising, and I've been with Walton for 10 years. I left Walton after being there for 7 years and went to one of the largest RIAs in the country and did recruiting for them. And it's interesting to see how back then they really weren't offering alternative investments because they didn't understand how they could scale that and how they could really control it across their advisors as they wanted to grow. Now being over, I think, they're almost 50 billion in assets. They have introduced alternatives to their platform. And then I was also a BlackRock. So as a wholesaler at BlackRock, selling stocks and bonds, iShares, ETFs, active funds. And that's when I really realized that I wanted to sell alternative investments. BlackRock is an amazing company, but I have a passion for hard assets and real estate. And so I got back into this space and came back to Walton. So I've been back for about 2.5 years. So I hope that the perspective that I have of being on, different sides of the business can help our conversation today.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that presentation introduction. It really sets the tone for us and our future viewers of this record. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about the problem, the industry problem. So, and I've seen this happen. RAs often say that most alternative conversations feel scripted or sales driven, and I can attest to that, and I've been on those. From your perspective, you touch a little bit on that. What's missing this in the typical dialogue? What do you do?
Yeah, I think for RIAs, understanding where they're coming up from and what are they trying to accomplish by adding alternatives. Are they looking to diversify away from the markets? We know that many clients now are highly concentrated across a few companies and they really want to offer further diversification in the portfolio. Are they trying to generate alpha? They trying to reduce volatility? Just really understanding what they want before the sales conversation starts, because really from knowing what their goals and objectives are for their clients is then where you need to take the conversation. So I think that's just one of the issues is it's not starting with the problem that the RIAs have.
And I tend to agree. You have to listen first. You have to look holistically at the whole situation before you start, taking the conversation down a path of what the product is and what it can do, because it's important, but that's not the first priority. So in your experience, what misunderstandings or even blind spots or not really capturing the priorities do you see when RAs first evaluate alternatives?
Yeah, so I believe one issue is that they sometimes will confuse institutional size for institutional quality. So they'll say, oh, this is a big household brand. I recognize this brand. It's a huge fund. It's distributed everywhere. Everybody's doing it, so it must be good.
Right.
And that is not necessarily the case. In fact, sometimes with alternatives, finding more boutique niche managers can help you achieve your objectives. even better, giving that diversification or creating alpha. When you go with a household name, sometimes they're having to deploy so much capital that they really adjust from trying to generate alpha in their portfolios to really asset preservation, just trying to keep stability, because they're putting their flows are so great that they have to really put out a lot of money, buy a lot of properties, or if they're private credit, or do a lot of loans. And because of that, they're forced to, it's about volume. And then if you're the RIA that's choosing those bigger household names that have massive funds, you can lose really that alpha generation. You get alpha decay through that dilution.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. So let's move now to, how is your approach different? Let's focus on that, because I think that's the fun part, I personally think. So you're known for having these conversations that sounds like, the competition. What does actually look like that in practice? So we all know that we do not want to sound like the competition. So how do you anticipate moving away from that, differentiate yourself, your offerings, and how do you go about it? And what does it look like?
I think sometimes wholesalers just get bad reputations, bad names. Advisors like maybe dread meeting with wholesalers because many of them are coming without adding any value, and they're just coming in trying to sell something. And you can see right through that as an advisor. If you don't have somebody who's really trying to educate you, help you accomplish your goals, become a business partner with you, then you're probably not going to get that second or third meeting. So for me, and what I talk to my team about on the wholesaling side, is just really educating, but being an expert in what you're talking about so that you can go deep into the weeds. RIAs, they're fiduciaries. They have to do what's in the client's best interest. So they want to understand a lot of the details. And separating myself from the competition is knowing literally every single thing that they could possibly ask about the strategy, the fundamentals of what's driving the strategy, ensuring there's no style drift, track record, the team, deep into the underwriting, how do the numbers work, really leading with, hey, what's the risk? What's the worst case scenario here for your clients, so that they can understand that. And that's really what separate, I would say, good messaging and good conversations with RIAs from what most people are doing when they walk in to try to sell something.
Right. And actually, it makes a lot of sense. Let's not forget that besides having fiduciary responsibilities, RIAs are all about relationships. It's part of their model, it's part of their DNA. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. So really take that consultative approach, if you will. Let's continue on this for a moment. Based on what you just said, walk us through your first 5 minutes with an advisor, perhaps providing some elevated type or an overview of some one or two examples. So do you lead with products, performance? Do you make it more personal, or do you do something entirely different?
I definitely start with personal. By the time I've gotten there, I know as much as basically is publicly available to know about that person. I know sort of it can being considered an online stalker, which sometimes they probably think that I am, but I'm showing that I care because I did my research. I looked at their website. I found everything I could about them to just really try to build that relationship, come up with some rapport, some common ground, common interests, asking about them, getting to know them, and then showing, that I'm a human, and just building that relationship to start. Then understanding about their book of business, like, anything that they'll share with me that they think would be relevant for me to know, asking if they have any questions before we get started learning more about my offering, and then really just leaning on them to guide the conversation, but really trying to help them understand the fundamentals of, why this strategy, why this alternative, how it can help them with their solve whatever problems that they've shared. And then always, leaving it personal at the end, doing like that, that U-turn sales approach. And at the end, always setting the next appointment, keeping that momentum.
Yes.
so that at the end, it's not if we just leave and it feels good and they're interested, but there's not a meeting set, then, oftentimes that can lead to like nothing happens in the future. So just helping them maintain momentum as
Right.
far as they want to take it. If they end up using the product or not, they know that I'm a good business partner. I wasn't trying to sell them anything, really trying to educate them. And sometimes what I have is not what they're necessarily looking for. And so there's times where I'm like, you know what, this doesn't sound like it might be a good fit, but I can introduce them to other
Right.
wholesalers, other products that could be helping to accomplish what they're looking for.
That is so fundamental, because at the end of the day, it's about sales. Nobody can take that away from what it actually is, but it's how it is executed, it's how it is delivered, and more importantly, if you're passionate and if you are a firm believer and if you are caring. I love what you just described. Honestly, it's my approach as well. If I cannot help you, let me see what I can do to have somebody help you. And more, another important component, which I also tell my clients, is don't ever leave without having some sort of commitment. You call it momentum, which I love, but it's also a commitment. Just if I can share something, many times I feel that clients, prospects are a little hesitant asking for the next step. It's actually the way I view it, and I don't know what your take is on this. You make it asking for the next step, asking for the commitment of, let's schedule a second meeting, a second call, whatever the next step should be. It actually shows in my mind that you actually care, because you don't want to leave the table without having something to continue the conversation. So it shows your commitment, it shows your passion, it shows that you care. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, even just doing the research ahead of time is just
Yes.
the more you can show and genuinely care about these people, you're trying to help them. They're trying to help people invest their money, hard-earned money, their family money, passing legacies. I
Right.
mean, it's a big responsibility. So showing that care is going to help you build a relationship, and that's going to carry you into the future, whether you do business now or not. But there's many advisors, RIAs, that I've never done business with, and I know that they will take my call, and they'll call me back, and it's because they know that I'm genuinely care about them, and I'm not trying to sell them anything anytime I'm talking to them.
Right, right, I agree. And along this, thank you for that. It is so fundamental to any success story, I think. And along the same line, given this level, this approach, how do you help RAs cut through complexity without oversimplifying the investment itself? Because it has to be obviously part of your conversation. So how do you tie it all of that into what is, in essence, a technical conversation?
Yeah, and I really lean on the RIAs for that. It's, tell me your process for choosing what alternative investments you're going to use in your lineup. If you have an investment committee who's involved, and from there I can really sparse out the how much complexity we need to get into right there, if other people and other constituents need to be involved, setting up future calls. But just also getting to the point where you do boil it down to very simple messaging that they can repeat to their
Yeah.
clients when they're telling the story. So you really have to cover the full gambit of the complexity so that they can have confidence in using the alternative investment. But then how do they take that complexity and then tell their investors how they're allocating their
Yeah.
investments? And so that's really, again, leaning on them for how they want to go through that.
So you're helping while they're helping themselves. I love
Right.
that. It's
Exactly.
it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. We're approaching the end, but I love what you said. This all makes sense. And what are, any final thoughts that you might want to share? Any, nuggets of experience, or anything that you might want to say. This is in addition to what I just said, that you might want to add for our viewers.
Yeah, I think just, I mean, looking at how long somebody's been in business, the track record, I think specialization requires sacrifice. So as
Yeah.
RIAs are looking at alternatives, just making sure that the partners that you are investing in don't have too much style drift, because again, the bigger they get, the more capital they have to deploy. Are they really sticking to the fundamental strategy that they know and that they're experts in? Or are they, starting to, buy different asset classes, or maybe go outside of the thesis of the investment? So